Well, let's speak to Dutch environmentalist Alexander Verbeek. He joins me live from Ottawa. Thanks for being with us on the programme tonight. Now, the US made sweeping promises at the summit, very much showcasing their stance. Now, should we take all this with a pinch of salt? Is the US meeting its obligations?
Well, depends a bit how you look at it. They do seem to meet their obligations by what they have done now is the Inflation Reduction Act. So that's a massive amount of money, 370 billion, that's going to be spent on greening the economy, on reducing emissions. So on reaching their target for 2030, I haven't made a kind of back of the envelope calculation, but I guess that is probably fair to say that they will be able to make it. So from that aspect, doing at home what they're supposed to do, what they should have done much earlier, I guess they're on the right track. And I admire President Biden for getting that far. But yeah, it's not all the commitments that you have to do as a Western country.
Well, what about specifically these promises, these pledges of millions and billions of dollars to developing nations? In practical terms, what does this mean? What can be done?
Well, the Western countries promised at UN level to starting 2020 that we would give $100 billion per year to help the poorer countries in the South with both the mitigation and the adaptation. So preventing that we pollute the atmosphere more, that would lead to more heating, as well as helping to the impact that they are experiencing because we have already produced so much global warming. And year after year, the Western countries haven't paid what we had promised to do. And so there we're certainly lacking behind. So if, again, looking at the United States, I just said I admire the program, what they're doing. But if you look at their historical contribution, basically since we started the Industrial Revolution, the historic contribution of the United States is about a fifth, 20% of all the greenhouse gases that are in the atmosphere. So if you say that they would therefore have a 20% responsibility in helping the poorer countries that are getting the impact of a problem that they've never caused in the first place, then they are far, far behind. And they should have given last year something like 40 billion. And they gave only, it's still a huge amount, but they gave only, I believe, 7.5 billion, 7.6, I think, 7.6 billion US dollars. So there they are far behind in what they should be given.
Well, let's just go back to the United States and responsibilities at home. None of this happens without legislation. If I may just, we've been in a very turbulent time the last few days, but there's certainly a lot of green legislation that simply isn't being passed. What more does the US need to do in the short term and the longer term?
Well, the US has secured this enormous amount of 370 billion. So that is safe, that is going to happen, that is going to be a massive investment as well in the American economy, because as Biden rightly says, it is not only from an environmental or humanitarian or a health point of view a good thing to invest in climate. It also makes economically good sense to renew your economy in many ways. So that investment is going to take place. But for next steps, it's going to be difficult. We don't know yet if the Republicans will have a majority in the House. From last things that I heard, it looks like it, but we don't know yet. That will make it difficult for certainly the next 2 years of his presidency to introduce new laws, and that would also, coming back to the commitment to pay up to the poorer countries, that will be difficult to get accepted as a budget in a House that has a majority of the Republicans. So the glass is half full and the glass is half empty. But concluding, looking back at just a few years ago, when the United States was the first and only ever country to step out of the Paris Agreement that they had helped themselves so much to negotiate, and now they're back in. they are so heavily investing in a new and cleaner economy that will ultimately not only help themselves, but also reduce the impact on the poorer countries. I think basically this is a good day for climate, but there are still huge steps that we have to take in the future. We're certainly not there yet.
Alexander Vermeek, thank you so much for joining us this evening.